7 championships. Not 6 like Tom Brady, 7. A winning percentage so high that modern statisticians assume the data must be wrong. This quarterback dominated professional football more completely than any player before or after him. And right now, you cannot say his name. You have never watched his highlights. You have never heard analysts compare young quarterbacks to him. The NFL buried him in history books that nobody reads. But he is not alone. There are 10 legendary players on this list who changed professional football forever and received nothing in return. No recognition, no fame, no place in modern conversations. One of them helped end segregation in the nation's capital. One of them had his body destroyed after just 68 games. One of them won 4 Super Bowls and never received a Hall of Fame vote. These are their stories. And by the end of this video, you will be angry that you never knew their names. The Pittsburgh Steelers dynasty of the 1970s is considered the greatest defense in NFL history. 4 Super Bowl championships in 6 years, names that echo through football eternity. Joe Green, Jack Lambert, Jack Ham, Mel Blount, the Steel Curtain. But there was another name, a 6'6" defensive end who wore gold cleats before anyone else dared to express individuality. A pass rusher who terrorized quarterbacks in all 4 Super Bowl victories. A man who recorded an unofficial 73 career sacks in an era when sacks were not even recorded. L.C. Greenwood. In Super Bowl X, Greenwood did something that should have made him immortal. Dallas Cowboys quarterback Roger Staubach dropped back to pass. Greenwood burst through the line and hit Staubach so hard that the ball flew backward. The Steelers recovered. Pittsburgh won. Greenwood had delivered the defining play of the championship. Nobody remembers. When documentaries cover those Steelers teams, Greenwood receives a passing mention. When analysts discuss the greatest defensive ends in history, his name never appears. He was surrounded by so many Hall of Famers that his individual brilliance became invisible. Joe Green made it to Canton, Jack Lambert made it to Canton, Jack Ham made it to Canton, Mel Blount made it to Canton. L.C. Greenwood died in 2013 without a gold jacket. 4 Super Bowl rings on his fingers, 0 recognition from the Hall of Fame. The man in the gold cleats faded to black while his teammates lived forever. But at least Greenwood played alongside greatness. The next player on this list was great entirely alone, 2 decades before his time. Harold Carmichael stood 6'8". In 1971, that height was considered a liability for a wide receiver. Scouts believed tall receivers could not run routes. Coaches believed tall receivers could not create separation. The entire NFL believed that receivers should be small, quick, and shifty. Harold Carmichael proved everyone wrong. For 13 seasons, he destroyed the Philadelphia Eagles record books. 90 career touchdown receptions, over 8,000 career receiving yards, a physique that made jump balls completely unfair. Defensive backs would leap as high as they could, and Carmichael would simply reach over their heads and pluck the ball from the sky. He was Calvin Johnson before Calvin Johnson was born. He was the blueprint for every tall receiver who came after him. He showed the league that size could be an advantage rather than a weakness. But Harold Carmichael played for the Philadelphia Eagles during their worst decades. No Super Bowl appearances, no national spotlight, no primetime games where America could witness his dominance. He was the greatest receiver nobody saw. The Hall of Fame ignored him for 47 years, nearly half a century. When they finally inducted him in 2020, he was 71 years old. He had waited his entire adult life for recognition that should have come decades earlier. 47 years of being forgotten. 47 years of watching smaller, less dominant receivers receive the glory he deserved. Harold Carmichael changed what a receiver could be, and the sport thanked him with silence. The next player on this list waited even longer for recognition, and he never received it at all. Steve Van Buren ran through mud, through snow, through defenses that had no answer for his power. In the 1940s, he was the most dominant rushing force professional football had ever seen. 4 rushing titles in 5 years, 2 NFL championships won on his legs alone. The 1948 championship game was played in a blizzard so severe that the field was invisible under snow. Steve Van Buren carried the ball 26 times, scored the only touchdown, and delivered Philadelphia their first title. 1 year later, another championship game, another miserable day, rain turning the field to swamp. Van Buren carried the ball 31 times for 196 yards. Philadelphia won again. Steve Van Buren was unstoppable in conditions that should have made running impossible. He was the original workhorse back, the original closer, the original player who took the ball and refused to be denied. And modern fans have no idea he existed. His statistics look small compared to today's runners because he played 8 seasons and retired at 28. Longevity defines greatness in modern analysis. Career totals determine legacy. Van Buren's peak was so brief that the numbers do not capture his dominance. But those who watched him knew the truth. Steve Van Buren was the first rushing superstar. Every powerback who came after him owes their existence to what he proved. Football could be won on the ground, in the mud, in the snow, by one man who simply would not stop. Speaking of stopping, the next player on this list could not be stopped either, but he played in a city that America forgot even existed. Ken Anderson threw for over 32,000 yards in his career. He completed over 59% of his passes in an era when anything over 50% was considered elite. He won the NFL Most Valuable Player Award in 1981. He led the Cincinnati Bengals to the Super Bowl. Ken Anderson should be a household name. He should be mentioned alongside Terry Bradshaw and Roger Staubach and Dan Fouts. He should be in every conversation about the great quarterbacks of the 1970s and 80s. Instead, he is invisible. The problem was Cincinnati. Small market, minimal national exposure. When the Bengals played on Sunday afternoon, most of America was watching other games. When Anderson delivered masterpiece performances, the highlights appeared for 30 seconds on the evening news and then vanished. He played in the wrong city at the wrong time. His Super Bowl appearance came against the San Francisco 49ers dynasty. The Bengals lost to Joe Montana in a game that America remembers only for the winning side. Anderson threw for 275 yards and nearly pulled off the upset. Nobody cared. The story was Montana's arrival, not Anderson's excellence. The Hall of Fame Selection Committee meets every year and ignores Ken Anderson every year. His statistics are better than multiple enshrined quarterbacks. His resume is deeper than multiple enshrined quarterbacks, but he does not have the narrative. He does not have the market. Cincinnati erased him. And if Cincinnati could erase a great quarterback, imagine what happened to a quarterback who was discarded by multiple teams before anyone believed in him. Jim Plunkett has 2 Super Bowl rings. He won the Heisman Trophy. He was the #1 overall pick in the 1971 draft. He was named Most Valuable Player of Super Bowl 15. Jim Plunkett is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. His story is one of the greatest resurrections in sports history. New England drafted him and destroyed him. Their offensive line could not protect him. Injuries piled up, confidence shattered. They traded him to San Francisco, where he sat on the bench for 2 seasons before being released. Jim Plunkett was finished, washed up, a cautionary tale about first-round picks who cannot handle the NFL. The Oakland Raiders signed him as a backup in 1978. Nobody expected anything. Then, in 1980, starting quarterback Dan Bastarini broke his leg. Plunkett took over a struggling team and led them on an impossible run. Wild card to playoffs to Super Bowl to champions. The man nobody wanted anymore had won the ultimate prize. 3 years later, he did it again. Super Bowl 18. Raiders destroyed Washington 38-9. 2 championships, 2 rings, the ultimate comeback story ever told. And the Hall of Fame pretends he does not exist. Every year, voters discuss candidates. Every year, Jim Plunkett is not even mentioned. 2 Super Bowl victories are apparently not enough. 1 MVP performance is apparently not enough. Overcoming complete career destruction is apparently not enough. Jim Plunkett is the greatest champion not in Canton. His redemption arc belongs in a Hollywood movie. Instead, it belongs nowhere. The NFL chose to forget him. But being forgotten by voters is one thing. The next player on this list was forgotten while changing the entire nation. December 1961. Washington was the last team in professional football to integrate. The franchise had refused to sign black players while every other team had moved forward. The nation's capital remained segregated on the football field. Then, Bobby Mitchell arrived. The Cleveland Browns traded him to Washington specifically to break the color barrier. Mitchell understood the weight of what he was doing. He was not just catching passes, he was representing an entire race in a city that had rejected them. Mitchell responded with brilliance. 72 receptions for 1,119 yards, 11 touchdowns. He led the entire NFL in receiving yards during his first season in Washington. The racists who had demanded segregation had to watch a black man dominate their team. Mitchell was not just great, he was undeniable. He was so talented that bigotry could not construct an argument against him. He forced Washington to confront its own hatred by being impossible to ignore. For 11 seasons, Mitchell dazzled. 14,000 combined yards from scrimmage. He played halfback, wide receiver, kick returner. Whatever the team needed, Mitchell provided. But his legacy is not statistics. His legacy is dignity. His legacy is walking into a hostile environment and proving through excellence that equality was not just moral, but logical. Bobby Mitchell helped integrate the nation's capital through football. The Hall of Fame inducted him in 1983, but modern fans do not know his name. The NFL celebrates its integration story selectively. Some pioneers receive documentaries. Bobby Mitchell receives silence. He deserved more, and so did the man who integrated professional football before him. Marion Motley did not just play fullback, he played fullback and linebacker, offense and defense, every snap of every game. In 1946, Marion Motley became one of the first black players to integrate professional football since the league's unofficial ban began in 1933. 13 years of segregation ended with Motley and 3 other players breaking through. But Motley did not just participate, he dominated. 238 pounds of power running through defenders like they were children. 5.7 yards per carry for his career, an average that would be elite today and was absolutely unprecedented in his era. And when the other team had the ball, Motley stayed on the field and played linebacker. He tackled opposing runners with the same violence he used to run them over. 2 positions, 2 responsibilities, 1 man doing the work of 2 players every single game. The abuse he endured was horrific. Opponents targeted him with cheat shots. Fans screamed slurs. Hotels refused him rooms. Restaurants refused him service. Marion Motley changed professional football while America tried to destroy him for it. His statistics are impossible to evaluate because the league was smaller and seasons were shorter, but everyone who watched him agreed. Marion Motley was the most powerful runner they had ever seen. He was Jim Brown before Jim Brown existed, and almost nobody today knows his name. Integration heroes should be celebrated forever. Jackie Robinson is immortal. Marion Motley is a trivia question. The NFL failed him. America failed him. But at least Motley had a full career to prove his worth. The next player on this list had his body destroyed before the world truly understood what he could do.
Terrell Davis was unstoppable. Not great, not elite, unstoppable. Between 1996 and 1998, no running back in football came close to his level. He rushed for over 2,000 yards in 1998. He won the Super Bowl MVP in 1997. He led the Denver Broncos to back-to-back championships with a running style that combined power, vision, and burst in perfect proportion. Then his knee exploded. A torn ACL in 1999, another devastating injury in 2000, a third setback that forced his retirement at age 29. Terrell Davis played only 78 games in his entire career. 78. Modern running backs play that many in 5 seasons. Davis played that many total, and during that brief window, he was the most dominant player in professional football. His peak was 4 seasons. 4 seasons of absolute brilliance, followed by nothing. The Hall of Fame voters debated for years whether a short career could qualify for enshrinement. They eventually inducted him in 2017, but the debate itself was insulting. Terrell Davis was the best running back on the planet for 4 consecutive years. He won 2 championships and an MVP. He carried an entire franchise on his shoulders. The only thing that stopped him was his own body. Longevity should not be the only measure of greatness. Peak performance matters. Championship performance matters. Terrell Davis had both, and for years, the sport acted like he did not exist. But if Terrell Davis had his prime stolen by injury, the next player had his prime stolen by tragedy. Gale Sayers played 68 games in his entire NFL career. 68. That is 4 seasons of football. That is nothing in terms of longevity. But Gale Sayers might be the greatest runner who ever lived. His first season was supernatural. 22 touchdowns as a rookie. A 6-touchdown performance against the San Francisco 49ers that remains one of the most dominant individual games in history. He moved with a fluidity that seemed to violate physics. Defenders would reach for him, and he would simply not be there anymore. They called him the Kansas Comet, a streak of brilliance across the field that could not be tracked or predicted or stopped. Then the injuries came. Knee surgery in 1968, another surgery in 1970. His body could not hold together. The speed that made him magical disappeared. At 28 years old, Gale Sayers retired because his legs could no longer carry him. But that is not the tragedy that defines his legacy. Brian Piccolo was his teammate, his roommate, his best friend. In 1969, Piccolo was diagnosed with cancer. Gale Sayers watched his closest companion deteriorate. He visited hospitals. He held Brian's hand. And in 1970, Brian Piccolo died at 26 years old. Sayers gave an acceptance speech at a banquet that year. He spoke about Piccolo. He spoke about love and friendship and loss. Grown men wept. The speech became the foundation for the movie Brian's Song, which became one of the most beloved sports films ever made. Gale Sayers had his body stolen by injury and his heart broken by death. His career was a meteor that burned too bright and too brief. 68 games, 22,400 yards from scrimmage, a lifetime of what-ifs. The Hall of Fame inducted him at age 34, the youngest player ever enshrined at that time. They could not wait any longer because everyone who had watched him knew. Gale Sayers was special beyond measurement. But even Sayers had recognition eventually. The number 1 player on this list dominated football more completely than anyone and received nothing.
Otto Graham won 7 championships. 7, more than any quarterback in the history of professional football. Read that again. Tom Brady has 6. Terry Bradshaw has 4. Joe Montana has 4. Otto Graham has 7, and nobody talks about him. For 10 consecutive seasons, Otto Graham led the Cleveland Browns to the championship game. 10 straight years. He won 7 of those games. His career winning percentage as a starter is over 80%. His teams went 114 wins, 20 losses, and 4 ties. Those numbers should be impossible. Those numbers should dominate every conversation about quarterback greatness. Those numbers should make Otto Graham the consensus greatest winner in NFL history. Instead, he is a ghost. Graham played in the 1940s and 50s. Television was not widespread. Highlights were not preserved. The All-America Football Conference, where he won his first 4 titles, is treated as illegitimate by modern analysts. History books mention him briefly and move on. But the people who watched Otto Graham knew the truth. He could throw the ball with precision that would not be matched for decades. He could run when necessary. He could lead a team through any situation. 7 championships, 80% winning percentage, 10 consecutive title game appearances, statistics that will never be approached by any quarterback who ever plays the game. And you had never heard his name before today. The NFL forgot Otto Graham.
The greatest winner in football history was erased because he played before cameras captured every moment. His dominance existed. His legacy does not. Until now. 10 players, 10 giants who shaped professional football and received nothing in return. Some waited decades for recognition. Some are still waiting. Some died without ever hearing their names spoken with the reverence they deserved. This is the uncomfortable truth about sports history. Greatness is not enough. Timing matters. Market size matters. Media exposure matters. You can win 7 championships and become invisible. You can break barriers and be forgotten. You can dominate your era and watch lesser players receive the glory. These 10 men deserved better. They deserved their names spoken alongside Brady and Montana and Rice. They deserved documentaries and commemorations and permanent places in football conversations. Instead, they got silence. But now you know their names. Now you know their stories. Now you can make sure they are never forgotten again. Share this video. Tell their stories. Give these legends what the NFL refused to give them: recognition.